Good afternoon, traders. This is Christian Farmhart's Tribeca Trade Group, and this is your end of day market recap for Thursday, the 8th. We've got one more day of the trading week to go, and just another nonstop kind of exciting type day. Very fast moving. Something for everybody today. A lot of short squeezes going on. These names with some of them with 40% short interest. It really makes you think about risk reward, whether or not you like or dislike a name. Having something with 40% short interest, you have to think about things in terms of risk reward. And, I don't know, in terms of shorting things, right? It's one of those situations where, all the shorts are already in these names. So any possible positive news that you see, what I'm referring to is Carvana, Affirm, Upstart. Some of these names, really the shorts loaded up in these names and appear to be still in them. So right now it kind of took another level today in terms of what we're seeing in terms of now names that are seeing that high short interest are now getting squeezed, because once they start, once one has it, often what you see is many other names that have that high short interest, just because they're in that group, often seem to get covered as well. So themes of the day, and risk disclaimer in front of you, everything that we're going through is for information purposes only, not giving out any advice or recommendations. So I'll get to kind of the theme of the day. I think one of the interesting things is, we saw this reversal day yesterday in the Qs and rotation, right? That was the theme of yesterday, certainly was rotation. And the question was coming into today, like normally when you see that type of a reversal day in Qs, is that there's usually some follow through to the downside, and sometimes it takes a couple days to shake out. And one of my questions coming into today was, whether or not we would see that for a couple days, or if people have been really waiting for some type of small dip to get back involved. And I think it was the latter. I think people have been waiting to get into some of these names, and they are under owned in them, and they're looking for any dip to get, to move back into them. And I think if, that kind of speaks to the performance. If you look at the Qs for the day, they outperformed. They were up 1.2%. Interesting, the small caps were down at 1.1% today, and they came back. So, massive outperformance by the small caps. Now, for the month of June, IWM is up 7%. Small cap value has actually outperformed. That's IWN as in Nancy. That's up 7.8%. So even with today, like those areas not being the strongest areas, we've got a very strong market on our hands. That rotation like that, where you're seeing buyers kind of jump from one area to the other, is just very, in my opinion, symbolic of a very strong market. However, right, the fun is going to end for the market bulls. It may not end long term, but it may take a pause, because next week, right, and again, we started this week talking about how there just wasn't really much macro to really get in the way of equity bulls. There's no Fed speakers. They're in a quiet period this week. There's no major, economics this week, right? Everything kind of lines up next week. So I'm going to start with that first, because I think that that's important to kind of, think about things in terms of a risk perspective, right? Next week on Tuesday, you've got the CPI report. Now, again, you're going to hear about all these, all of the CPI reports, from these brokers. And I'm going to, beat to the punch, this, what these guys are going to say a little bit. And we're starting to hear it already in terms of this. But when you look at the year over year number, right, the year over year number is going to come down, right? I talked about this months ago, right? Talking about how the CPI could come down to 3%. Why is that possible? Right? Let me bring up this you could see, because when you're looking at year over year change, by definition, it only goes back a year. So if the inflation report comes out 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, right? You're going to lose these months. Let me just blow this up for you so that you can see this, right? So this 0.9, this 1.2, right? That's going to roll off, right? And so just now, it doesn't mean inflation is coming down. It means the metric that they're tracking it is going to be moving down in terms of a year-over-year basis. Now, again, you look at 2 years, nothing's really going to change because you're still including all these numbers. Remember, the inflation is the rate of change. So if you roll off these past months, and I know this is going to anger some people because inflation is not really dropping. It's just the measure of, if you measure it month over month, then it's the latest month. If you measure it year over year, by definition, you can't go back a year and a half, right? You have to. So when this report comes off, the 0.9 and the 1.2, right? There are no other big months. Now, there's a 0.5 and a 0.5, but there's no 0.9 and 1.2. So, I saw this report, like Zero Hedge was mentioning this last night. They're like, yeah, Goldman, and I think it was JP Morgan, they're bringing down their CPI estimates because, duh, it's simple. It is very simple math, right? You have to look, unfortunately, you have to look back only a month and it's going to come down quite a bit. All right. So anyway, so that's Tuesday. Sorry to get off track with that, but I like to be the first. I do like to be the first one out there who says these things. And this is a simple one, right? But it will still shock people because they don't do the math. They don't look at the last, how that it's computed. And it's very simplistic. All right. So besides the CPI report, the Fed is going to speak on Wednesday. Now, again, I don't know what the Fed is going to say, but I know that's an event that we have next week. And then on Friday, don't forget, it's, some people dwell on monthly option expirations. That's not that important. It's the fact that all of the S&P and all of the NASDAQ indices quarterly rebalance. It's not that big of a deal for the S&P because it's a modified float index, but things like XRT, right? All of those ETFs that are equally weighted, the XRT, the XBI, the XHB, right? Those are all equally weighted. There's going to be a ton of trading that happens on Friday, and sometimes that can act as a turning point for the market because you're really jostling a lot of names. So I'll say that again: it's quarterly index rebalancing, right? Nobody talks about it, especially like the option people don't talk about it because they don't know what it is, right? What we try to do at Tribeca Trade Group, and from my trading experience, right? I used to trade on a Delta One trading desk, right? I used to, for years, I traded on an institutional trading desk. So I know how indices work. I know how options work, right? The problem is when you read some of these people who put out just option reports or stock reports, they're not putting all these moving parts together. So, all these people who put out like these option levels based on, gamma and so forth, they don't know anything about index rebalancing, right? They'll just say, oh, it's monthly options expiration, which is also happening next week too. But I think the index rebalancing will be much better. But regardless, the option people will just say, oh, it's because of the option rebalancing. But I think you get my point. We have a very big week ahead. So why am I stressing that before talking about today's market action? So that you can plan ahead a little bit, right? And be a risk manager, not just a trader. Okay, so let's get to today's price action. That said, right? But again, part of why I do these videos, right? I try to educate investors, right? And I try to make sure that they understand when there's a big event that's coming up, right? Sometimes I downplay events, but I think next week you have something that is probably going to cause volatility. Also, look at where the VIX is right now. It's a 13.6, right? Normally, if it's around an 18 or 19, I don't make that big of a deal about it, but we've gone down significantly in terms of where the VIX is. So, my plan is to be trimming positions. Or, the other thing is if you don't want to trim positions, put on a hedge, right? It's not expensive, right? It's certainly, buying, again, some people don't understand the expensiveness versus the cheapness, right? When the VIX goes down like that, that means options cost less, right? So you don't have to buy VIX options, right? That's a big misconception. Like whenever somebody talks about volatility, they're like, geez, what VIX instrument can I play? No, you buy S&P puts, right? Because they're cheap, right? And if there's volatility, those puts will go up big time in price, right? But you don't have to get all, try to find the sexiest VIX instrument because it sounds just that, right? Be smart and just, buy some S&P put options if you want to hedge your portfolio. That's all you have to do, right? You don't have to figure out leverage, because none of those things track the VIX appropriately. So anyway, that's for next week, and some thoughts to kind of think about that, and where the VIX is right now. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm just giving you things in terms of risk to reward and probabilities, right? If you can separate emotion and think about probabilities, right, and risk reward, that's more what trading is about. Not the making predictions, just understanding those relationships. Okay, so for the day, so let's talk about the market now. The Qs, yes, outperformed, up 1.2%. I think I already went over that a little bit, but again, I'm amazed to see software come back and lead after that big volume in the IGV ETF and the FTN ETF. Retail also was pretty good. Consumer discretionary, right now, a big chunk of that is Tesla, which I will get to in a second. But the semis came back too, up 1.5% for the session. So very, very nice rotation back. And again, that was one of the questions that I had top of the list to say, whether or not buyers were going to come back and take advantage of the market of that reversal day yesterday. Here's where we are for the S&P. Again, there's not much to really change, since we started the week, right? Here's what this looks like when we look at the 1 hour chart. Again, the 1 hour charts are important to me because they can reveal some things that you may not see on the daily chart. So we're basically back to this 4,300 level. Now, I would think that there's some resistance up here. It's a big level, right? Without knowing what the gamma levels are and all that fun stuff. But 4,300, just looking at the price action, number one, it's a big round number. Number two, we've paused here a couple times in the week, so we may turn back lower again, right? That may come up, be significant resistance. Here's where it gets even more interesting. The Qs, right? Dipped below the 5-period moving average yesterday. Well, it retook it today, right? And again, it's kind of tough here because you have this air pocket on my charts down to the 20-day moving average. You really don't have much to go on here, right? And by the way, it was an inside day today for the Qs. So no major kind of change here, right? And here's where, we did some work today and said, we talked about this in yesterday's video and in the trading room saying, hey, the bearish 80% rule was not complete. It got completed in the after hours market last night, right? It went down, kind of came in here, and we fulfilled the 80% rule and turned on a dime and went higher. So we're currently back to 350 above the value area for the week, right? And keep it simple, right? That's if you're trading more tech stocks, right? You probably want to be edged a little bit, longer, as long as we stay above 350, right? It's as simple as you can make it, and I like simple. IWM, right? So we're back to this version point of control that was taken out. Again, logical, right? Big move, huge move in small caps this week. Notice again, it's kind of like an inside candle. We got one of these the other day. Let this back and fill a little bit. Let these moving averages, in my opinion, catch up a little bit. I don't think that this move is done in the small caps, but it may come in and digest a little bit before it may charge ahead and see more rotation. Again, very interesting altogether. Bonds, I think, are also interesting too, right? They started to go lower again, rates going higher, and this 830 number that we had in initial jobless claims was higher than expected, and all of a sudden we caught a bond rally today. Now, it doesn't look that constructive here. It's still below the 200-day moving average, but if it holds on to 126.26, maybe bonds can kind of hold in and not break down, right? The breakdown would get me more worried than anything else. Let's talk about a couple names here in a couple of sectors. I have to talk about Tesla first. This is something that I've traded a lot. I've talked about one of the things that I talk about in the trading room quite a bit is I borrow this from other market wizards, and some other market wizards I don't have any particulars because sometimes I forget who says it. It's the content that's more important than who says it. Of course, always like to give credit to who says it, but you hear all the time that 3 or 4 names could make your year. Right. We've talked about NVIDIA, right? We've talked about Tesla. So Tesla is one of those names at this point, right? Which is really trending. Now, again, my twist on this is that you don't necessarily have to be in the stock the whole time, right? You can kind of trade around it a little bit, right? I bought a little bit and there's barely any weakness, right? It's one thing that we've talked about. I've had to, I'm borrowing this from my trading room, but there's a trader who said, okay, well, where do you think is a good buying place for Tesla? And we talked a little bit about the top of value, but I said, hey, this would be a great place, a great retest, and a place to maybe add more Tesla. But I said, I don't think that we're going to get down there necessarily, because strong stocks, they don't give you full opportunities. So you kind of have to do a little bit of legging in a little bit. And that's what I did in yesterday, even though I didn't like the price action, of course, in the Qs and in tech and in growth, right? I added a little bit, right? And that's kind of how I try to basically get involved in names is, because if it breaks down, right, you don't necessarily want to see a name break down. That means it's weak, right? So these small little dips like this, they're just not going to give you, the strong names won't give you the opportunity to get in them, right, on a major dip, right? And if there is a major dip, that's probably means that there's something really fundamentally wrong too, right? Everybody thinks, oh, if I had a dip in this name, it would be great. Well, dips they just don't happen for no reason. Usually there's something materially wrong that is going to cause that dip. So you have to look for little moves back into support, which we saw yesterday, right? And really nice. Again, you had to be a little bit patient with it on the hourly chart. Notice we've taken out this VPOC, right? So again, it goes back to what we talked about earlier this week, right? So I sold a little bit more on this rip here in the after hours. And basically, when we hit these virgin point of controls, it's going to be a little bit of a battle with buyers and sellers, right? The virgin point of controls mark where there's overhead supply. It doesn't mean that it's going to fade right there, but it's going to be a decision area, right? If there is that, if there are sellers who are going to sell into that, right, there have to be more buyers, right, that are going to actually push it through there, right? So the buyers have to outweigh the sellers, especially at those red lines at the virgin point of controls, right? So I hope that makes some sense. And of course, looking at the bigger picture, right? We talked about how 205 was a big level, right? We failed here, and the third time, maybe fourth time or fifth time was the charm, and we broke into the value area. What does this say? Top left, 80% rule, right? So now there's an 80% chance that we could go from one side to the other, right? That could be pretty awesome. Again, we're looking at the weekly chart. We're looking at the big picture. Does it go there in a straight line? No, I don't think so. So and I hope that it takes its time and backs and fills, because on the backing and filling, you could add, okay? So again, spending a bit more time here because this is really interesting. This opportunity. So again, the move could basically longer term could just be getting going, right? But again, you have to think longer term, right? If I say longer term, that doesn't mean tomorrow. That doesn't mean next week. It means think weeks and months ahead. All right. All right. So moving on. Where do I go from that one? I mentioned NVIDIA. We could look at this one. I try to trade this a little bit. I day traded this one first, right? And I knew where my resistance was. So first of all, let's do the right thing here. Let's talk about the daily chart. So daily chart, notice what this thing has been doing since it peaked out up here at 418 or 420. 420 magic number. But it's been joking around a little bit. It's been coming in here, and notice what it's doing, right? It's holding that value area. Maybe it's waiting for this 20-day moving average to kind of catch up a little bit, right? So I traded this for a dip trade today. It worked quite well. I unwound it, right? I said 230, excuse me, 387 was going to be my target. It was. I actually was thinking more that this could work out to be a swing trade. I put a trade on here. It didn't work, and I took it right off. So I'll be watching, and the level for me is 387. If this thing breaks in, I'll try it again. I tried it yesterday. It didn't work, clearly, right? And I backed out of it. So I made my money back in today's day trade, and we'll watch for 387, right? And I think the semiconductors look, while I'm on the semiconductors, look very interesting, right? Look at the consolidation. So speaking of a virgin point of control, right? The sellers won out here, right? It got, that's as far as the rally went. It got met. Buyers, ran out of ammunition, right? And now it's settling back. So if it gets, it may make another attempt here. So what would I be watching here in the SMH ETF, which again is the semis ETF? Watch this 148 level, right? It tried that earlier in the week and got rejected. Okay, and AMD was also a big name today. I am long some AMD. There was some big call buying as well as some put selling in the name. So I find this one interesting. Now, I don't know the reason why they were buying calls and selling puts today. I believe is what they were doing was selling puts today, but there is there's a couple events that are happening on 6/12 and 6/15. So, it could be that, they're going to introduce something or make some announcement, but I'm just speculating. I have no idea why they're buying calls. For now, I will be long it versus basically 116, and we'll see if it wants to kind of gather some momentum. Here's what the daily chart looks like. Again, you've got this back and forth price movement. So again, it's consolidating those recent gains. It's perfectly normal. All right. And, a couple other names that I'm watching in this space, ASML looks pretty decent too. Again, VPOC, so consolidation here. Let's see if it resolves higher. Rambus is another one that I'm watching, right? And ACLS, which also had a real nice continuation day. Also, I might as well talk about this name for a second. Amazing, right? I thought I put the jinx on this, right? Sometimes you send out a tweet and it kind of marks, the name rallies and then it sells off. I thought this is a really good example, by the way. I thought this might be a possible island reversal coming, right? But one day is not a chart pattern, right? Notice as ugly as this candle was yesterday, it went all the way up to 261 and then closed at 238. Notice that the price action did not go below this 5-period moving average, right? So the trend, the short-term trend momentum is still with the name, even after that really ugly candle. Since I'm talking about big names right now, Apple looks interesting, right? We know that it had its buy the rumor run into that event, and we had this sell the news day, right? Well, it's also kind of hanging in here above its 5-day moving average. So that I think is also something to watch, right? And you could be long right now, I think, versus 179. All right, so that's another one to mention. A few other names that I think were interesting for the day. Arista Networks, I missed this one today. It was on my list. I just didn't get involved. This thing was up 4.3%. Really nice reversal. Again, this thing came down, took out the virgin point of control to the downside, and now you have a reversal off of that. If you're not in it like me, what am I watching? I'm watching the bottom. So nice move from the bottom of value 156 to 162. Let's see if it can break into the value area for the week. That level is 163.20. Do you see how I'm going through levels here? And this way you're taking, when you look at the things in terms of this aspect, right? You're taking the emotion out of the equation. For instance, I would be long above 163. If it gets there and it doesn't make it and goes back below 163, I'm out, right? Even though I like the name and I have some reservations about it, right? You let your levels and the technicals judge whether or not you're going to go after a name like that. What else do I have written down? I started a position in Celsius today, right? Again, same drill. Start with the daily chart. Daily chart. What has this name been doing since it broke out? It's been consolidating a little bit of those gains. Where's my stop price? 135. Why? Because that's the top of the value area. We want to make sure it stays above there, right? Because that right now it's in price discovery. If it breaks back into this, it's back into the range, right? So it is a breakout type trade. Also, you could see on the 1 hour chart, 135 is your support there. So again, keep it simple. I'm long versus 135. I will look to take a target if it comes back to the previous range, previous high. All right, guys, that is it. I hope you enjoy the video a little bit longer today, but a lot to go over. Again, all of these things that we're talking about, you still have to kind of think about what you're going to do next week with all those events. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow.